on, motherfuckers, come on. Come on, motherfuckers, come on. Yeah. Come on, motherfuckers, come on. Come on, motherfuckers, come on.
So, Team Rocket's boss, Giovanni, commissions Dr. Fuji to find and clone a Mew to create the world's most powerful Pokemon at the time so that he can use it to rule the world. Unfortunately, he's an idiot and tells Mewtwo that he's essentially a slave. Mewtwo then rebels, tries and kills Giovanni, who somehow survives an entire building exploding, and then decides to take over the world and replace everyone with clones. So then he invites a handful of random trainers, Ash and Co included, to a secluded island to battle them and then clone their Pokemon and take over the world from there, while committing genocide with a giant storm. Mew then shows up for some reason, and then it just boils down to two cats fighting a war of supremacy? I don't know. Which all culminates in Ash not dying, being turned to stone by two psionically powered pussies. Then some bullshit with a magic legend, everyone comes back, Mewtwo learns the errors of his ways, realizes the worth of life is in what you do and not what you are, and then just completely resets everyone's memory so that this movie never happened. So a millionaire collector named Lawrence III reads an ancient tablet that describes a prophecy, and believes that he himself is the chosen one and is destined to collect the 3 legendary birds and then Lugia to save the world. While in reality, these ancient people are vague assholes and just like making shitty puns. Now, as the birds go missing and the power of balance is shifting, this area where the birds live, the cradle of the ocean, basically the ocean current starting point, goes out of whack and threatens to flood the world. Which can only be stopped if the chosen one, Ash, puts the 3 sacred treasures, the orbs of fire, ice, and lightning, in a sacred shrine on the home island. Then some girl sings a song on a shell, Lugia harmonizes his song with the birds, and then everything lives happily ever after. And somehow it has to be Ash to put the jewels on the shrine, and for some reason the jewels on the shrine aren't there to begin with, as a preemptive cautionary thing. And somewhere in there, apparently the legendary birds are vying for dominance on each other's territory, which is stupid because you realize that the whole world's going to be flooded, so what's there going to be to claim? And it basically devolves into the birds just randomly firing beams at each other. TLDR, the unknown are dicks. They do whatever they want to whoever they want, not caring at one single bit. They kidnap this little girl's father for some reason, and then when she believes he's dead, they just appear in front of her, handing her a blank check to re-alter reality for whatever reason. She then creates Entei, who she adopts as her father, and then her dreams get more and more out of control, feeding into the unknown, to the point where the whole world is at threat of being crystallized. Meanwhile, Ash comes in because she kidnapped his mom, trying to replace her own mother, and things happen, and the day is saved with a big explosion. Why did the unknown kidnap her father? I don't know. Why are the unknown just alphabet soup floating in 2 legendary dragons' home dimensions? I don't know. Why did they give an entire movie to some random alphabet Pokemon that is literally the worst in the world and literally has no prevalence aside from it just happening to have reality warping abilities? I don't know. It's unknown. Not unknown, unknown. So, a time-traveling onion brings a kid to the future to avoid a poacher, and they just happen across evil Dan Green, whose plan to use Celebi basically boils down to him being an eco-terrorist. Why, you may ask, is he doing this? Because he's evil, and nothing else. Okay, so a few decades ago, an evil trainer, because I guess it was just one of those jerkwads, decided to terrorize this town with his ancient Pokemon Aerodactyl and Kabutops. Then the town's savior, Latios, came in and somehow drowned both Pokemon, even though one of them's a water type. The evil trainer buggers off, and then the Latios' soul crystallizes into a jewel called the Soul Dew, which is then put into a garden where his children, Latios and Latias, grow up. Now fast forward to the future, members of Team Rocket named Annie and Oakley come to kidnap Latios and Latias, but then change their direction to the Soul Dew, which they use to power a machine that they built in case the evil Pokemon came back. Here's the problem. while the machine itself can do so much and is powered by the Soul Dew, it destroys the Soul Dew, which would bring another flood, therefore destroying the town. Great fucking plan. You made a machine powered by your savior's soul, and it destroys it, and in turn, you destroy your own town anyway. So what was the point of building the machine? And this is the first movie where someone dies. Not resurrected, not reincarnated, not Deus Ex Machina'd. They're dead. And they don't come back. And then, of course, Latias, maybe not, shows that she has a crush on Ash, which isn't weird if you grew up watching Johto with Bayleaf. And probably would have made an awesome, like, hey, that's a neat little tie-in to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. You know, the games where you get a Latios or Latias halfway through the game. So every 1,000 years, this comet shows up, and then the legendary Pokemon Jirachi awakens, who literally cannot grant wishes in the traditional sense. It cannot make things, it can only teleport things. Which I question why this Pokemon isn't the one that can warp reality when it's supposed to be the wishing Pokemon. But then, evil scientist Guy Butler decides to kidnap Jirachi and use him to siphon power away from the comet to reanimate a Groudon fossil, just to spite Team Magma to show that he can and that they're a bunch of idiots, which is kind of funny. But it turns out to not be Groudon, just some primordial slime creature that feeds on organic beings that just happens to look like Groudon. Then Jirachi absorbs the power of the comet again, then Kamehamehas the Groudon into oblivion. And then goes back to sleep. Yeah, Jirachi breaks someone's heart every 1,000 years after a week. Because apparently it needs a friend in order to wake up. Which it then severely traumatizes a week later when it has to go back to sleep for 1,000 years. Probably my favorite and maybe the best Pokemon movie. Mainly because it gets the whole point to Pokemon so well. A meteor comes crashing down to Earth, carrying 2 crystals, both of which are Deoxys. However, only one wakes up after the initial impact, and tries to revive his buddy. But then a motherfucking Rayquaza is like, get off my damn planet, and decides to just try and murder this Pokemon, who thankfully has a healing factor because God bless Recover. But unfortunately, Rayquaza rolled that sneak attack and completely vaporizes Deoxys' physical form, who then retreats into his core and then just lays dormant for 2 years to recover enough strength to fully manifest again. In the meantime, the 2 scientists who were in the middle of all this battle take the green core crystal back to their lab to maybe try and revive it on their own. Then Ash comes in, interested in the battle tower, because of course he is, gets himself, May, Brock, Max, and their new tagalongs, including the new character who is the son of the scientists, caught in the middle of a battle between Deoxys, who is now revived, and Rayquaza, who comes to, wreck shit. But then, Deoxys puts up a force field to cut everyone off, including Rayquaza, and then, because we organics obstruct its vision with our own bioelectric signal, then creates an army of clones to kidnap all the people in Larousse, to put them in one place to keep it from obstructing its vision and finding its friend. However, Rayquaza breaks through the barrier, and then just decides to murder Deoxys for a second time. But thankfully, the scientists revive the second Deoxys, which then saves his buddy, and then correlates and, makes peace with Rayquaza. All in time for the security system of Larousse to go haywire and just try and murder everyone. And the reason I like this movie so much is it fits the Pokemon theme, discovery. You learn more about Deoxys as the movie progresses, how it works, how it biologically functions. It's fascinating. It's discovery. It's learning. It's Pokemon. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this and recover your electric mouse. So, a Mew lives in a tree, which is actually a rock, figure that one out, and makes a habit of stealing stuff from the local castle. This wouldn't be a big issue until the local festival comes into town. Ash and Company, Team Rocket, all our favorites, come to celebrate the festivities and honor the hero, who happens to be the guy who imprisoned a Lucario and a staff for some reason. Mew then comes in, gets attacked by secret agent whoever's Weavile, and then kidnaps Pikachu and Meowth. This sends Ash on a crusade with Lucario, who is basically Goku, to recover his friend. All the while encountering 3 golems who you may very well recognize as the Reggie Trio, who have the best Pokemon cry, bar none, fight me on it. And then, during all this, the tree recognizes humanity as a threat and sends literal Pokemon antibodies to swallow them up and dissolve them. So Mew, the nice kind soul that it is, decides to tell the tree, hey, people aren't bad, please stop eating them, and then it spits them back out. The immune response causes the tree to die, and therefore Mew. All this would never have happened if Mew hadn't kidnapped Pikachu and Meowth. So how do they fix this, you may ask? Oh, same way Sir Aaron, Lucario's buddy from 100 years ago, stopped a war. Killing himself. Pumping his entire life force, his aura, into Mew, and somehow that fixes the tree. No one is sad that Lucario just died. I mean, it's possible he reincarnated as that guy from Gen 4, you know, the one near the Steel Gym on Ironworks Island, the guy who gives you a Riolu egg. I guess it's nice that he reincarnated, but still! Someone died to save your ungrateful ass, and you just forget about him and aren't even the slightest bit grateful. You piece of shit. Remember Pokemon Ranger? Shadows of Omnia? Guardian Signs? Yeah, those were good games. Too bad we'll never get them again. So, a pirate, no relationship to Team Aqua, named the Phantom, finds a Manaphy egg in the middle of the barren ocean and decides to use it to find an ancient sea temple to get a treasure called the Crown of the Sea, or something like that, to make himself the king of the ocean. He is thwarted by a Pokemon Ranger who uses a magic Beyblade to befriend Pokemon and to command them to do stuff, named Jack Walker, who then bands up with a traveling circus, who then runs into Ash & Co., big surprise, and then they enjoy the circus, but Team Rocket then alert the Phantom's goons that they have the egg and their location. So then a chase ensues, Manaphy hatches from an egg, the Phantom throws a fucking boulder at Jack Walker, surprise, surprise, and then for a large chunk of the movie it basically becomes an Indiana Jones flick. But then, when we get to the point where the kids get separated from the adults, they find the Sea Temple, which I'm questioning whether it's somewhat alive or not. Anyway, Phantom follows them in, desecrates the Sea Crown, which causes the Temple of the Sea to sink. And the only way to fix it is to put the treasure back. And Ash does that, who in turn goes Super Saiyan and has this magic golden aura around him, and chases down Phantom, who's kidnapped Manaphy again. And we learn he has an exosuit, and we just watch a bunch of fish fuck up a submarine. The dragons of time and space, being all like, get out of my room, or I'm telling Dad, basically go to a town, take it into another dimension, and then rip time and space a new one. All the while, Ash & Co. have to team up with the Nightmare Pokemon, who keeps giving everyone fucking bad dreams, to play a giant instrument to get them to shut the hell up. Tails finally becomes a hedgehog and ends up running away from and fighting Pokemon Satan. And that's the short version. Here's the little bit longer version. Shaman needs to get to the flower garden so he isn't left behind by his friends, or maybe she, I don't know. Giratina wants to hunt down Dialga and Palkia because their little spat caused his home dimension to become polluted with toxic gas. And then random scientist number 7 decides he wants to kidnap Giratina, drain him of his life force and power, make a giant aircraft that can go in and out of his home dimension, destroy humanity to keep them from polluting the reverse world, Giratina's home dimension. Which, by the way, I don't even think humans have the capability, at least not yet, to pollute Giratina's world. Because crazy blonde MILF wants her jellyfish baby, and neglectful mom and dad need to get back to the past or go back to the future. So Pokemon God condemns all of humanity to death because of one guy's actions, assuming they're all alike. That is the definition of racism. So, Dialga and Palkia's home dimensions colliding was Arceus' energy wavelength making them collide with each other, which then affected Giratina. The reason he's like this is because way back when, he gave up his life force to a guy named Damas to create a soul gem that would essentially breathe life into whatever area was blessed with its power. Unfortunately, fucking Jafar hypnotizes the king to keep the Soul Dew away from Arceus and then attacks him with electric types. And that spins Arceus off in his whole spiel of all humans must face justice. Ash and Co. show up, meet Deimos' descendant. Arceus shows up around the same time, so that's convenient. And then, when Deimos' descendant tries to give the jewel back, Arceus reveals it to be a fake. She then calls up his sons to try and hold off their big daddy, and then Dialga sends them back to the past to try and fix this. Which they do, and Jafar dies. But for some reason, time needs to catch up and isn't in sync, so when they go back to the present, Arceus is still attacking? I don't know. They don't know how time travel works. And then somewhere further down the line, Arceus decides, hey, I'm going to send some random people back to Sinnoh's past, which was called Hisui, and never bring them back to the present. So a businessman went to a town, found a Celebi's time ripple, and then stuck his hand in it and got future sight. He then comes back to the town years later with Azora and Zoroark, now posing as his illusionary legendary all-sports team, and decides to scare everyone out of town in order to find the second time ripple that Celebi came back to the town in to restore his future vision, which would cause all the local plant life to die for some reason. I assume it just ages into dust. This movie, although I enjoy Zora and Zoroark to an extent, is very mean-spirited. There is a scene where Kodai, the bad guy, chokes out Celebi. What the hell happened? Two princes have a spat and cause a dragon force, I'm assuming the planet's life force, to go out of whack, so their dad has to use the power of Victini to move their giant sword-shaped castle into a new location to quell the chaos. This causes him to die and Victini to be trapped for over 1,000 years. Now we fast forward. A descendant of the person of the Veil, the kingdom that were originally disbanded after the whole prince kerfuffle, then decides to reunite everyone and wants to use the power of Victini to move the sword back to try and restore the land. This horribly backfires. All the while, this movie was also divided into two. In one version, Ash gets Zekrom, in the other version, he gets Reshiram. And frankly, the one where he gets Zekrom is better because it actually has something to do with his character, instead of him just being a magical tourist. My little pony, go fight a transforming dragon. Edward Elric gets turned into a My Little Pony OC. He then joins the Swords of Justice, and to become a full member and understand the weight of the sword, which is basically the power of friendship, he has to fight a giant ice dragon, which is 1/3 of a holy true golden dragon, and in the process, he gets deformed. He loses his horn, meets up with Ash and Co., and then Kyurem, for whatever reason, just decides to be a dick and try and murder him. And all the while, transforming pointlessly, Keldeo learns the true magic of friendship and becomes a unicorn, who still loses, but still understands the weight of the sword. So this movie really wants to be Mewtwo Strikes Back, but it fails. So there's another Mewtwo now, created by another band of scientists, and she's a girl, which I can only presume was some attempt to recreate a Mewtwo species, because how else would they know about Mewtwo and Dr. Fuji's work? But after apparently going through the same arc as the first Mewtwo, she meets up with some Genesect, altered Pokemon created by Team Plasma, who she then tries to help understand their place in the world and come to terms with the fact they're reanimated from dead bodies. But the leader, which is a shiny Genesect, is like, nah dog, I just want to make my territory make everyone around me miserable, decides to hive mind his buddies and then take over the local zoo, where Ash and Co. are. They then fight over the zoo, with one baby Genesect just wanting to go home. And you really have a feel for this thing, except they keep blowing it up. And then it just devolves back into mean-spirited. Oh yeah, and for some reason, Mewtwo can Mega Evolve. And how does the shiny Genesect get its mind changed? Mewtwo takes it into space, tells it that we're all friends, when that is complete and utter Rapidash shit. Not everyone is your friend. Not the scientists who revive you and infuse your DNA so that you can mega evolve. Not the people who basically give you a chrome dip job and then put a cannon on your back. Yes, people in the world are dicks, and not all of them are going to be your friend. So Diancie needs to restore the crystal heart in her home territory so that, I don't know, her people's way of life doesn't die. Unfortunately, she's not strong enough to create a whole heart diamond, so she needs to find the legendary Xerneas to basically get her body enriched with magical fairy energy. Thankfully, Ash and Co. want to help her because 3 separate individuals want to kidnap her because, yes, Diancie can make actual diamonds. But then when they find Xerneas and she gets enriched and nothing happens, she's all downtrodden, but then the evil guys awaken Yveltal, and then he goes on a rampage for a bit. Pikachu dies, Diancie mega evolves and deflects the Oblivion Wing attack from Yveltal. Xerneas defeats Yveltal, turns into a tree, Yveltal leaves. And can I just say, I love the fact that Diancie has this, like, bubbly personality. It's actually quite enjoyable to watch her. So this movie was a massive fucking disappointment. And I'm gonna tell you how. Basically, what I thought this movie was, it was gonna be like Civil War legendaries. Like, this side we have with regular Hoopa, we have all these good legendaries, and on the other side, with evil Hoopa, it's bad ones. And I presume that these were all the same legendaries from the past movies, but apparently not. Because Pokemon just had to play that multiverse card. But anyway, a long time ago, Hoopa went a little power crazy because people kept showering it with gifts and stuff, and then someone trapped Hoopa's all-powerful Unbound form into a bottle, and then basically made Hoopa a slave for 10,000 years. The bottle then becomes open, tries corrupting Hoopa again, but then it comes to peace with it, and then basically breaks the bonds that it was sealed in. This was a disappointing movie. So, an evil Baron wants to capture the Pokemon Magearna to strip it of its power core to reactivate an ancient flying fortress. And the Pokemon Volcanian, which somehow doesn't have the unlimited water supply every other water-type Pokemon has, decides to protect her. And Ash and Co. are involved because Ash just happens to get handcuffed to Volcanian's leg. And somewhere in there, 100% Zekrom shows up, and then the guy tries firing at Magearna's home. It's a whole thing. It's like, wow, this is a saltine cracker of a movie. I might as well have gone out and bought a loaf of bread. At least the steampunk Clockwork Town was somewhat interesting. So this is basically a loose retelling of the first season of the anime with a Gen 7 Pokemon thrown in there, Marshadow. So we get all the usual stuff. Ash meeting Pikachu, getting Butterfree, getting Charmander from the new guy, who is just an all-around choom. And then, when Ash ends up getting the Ho-Oh feather and becoming Ho-Oh's chosen combatant in an attempt to catch it, asshole guy who abandoned Charmander is like, nah dog, I want to fight the Rainbow Turkey. So he punches Ash in the face, leaves him on the edge of a cliff to die, and runs up the hill to try and battle Ho-Oh and catch it. This corrupts the feather, which ends up poisoning the whole of the region, because this idiot just can't get it through his head that when you're not chosen by the giant Rainbow Turkey, who can resurrect random dogs into legendary beasts of unfathomable power, you don't get to battle him. You weren't chosen. And then Marshadow's thrown in there for some reason. And apparently Pikachu talks for like 2 minutes. That was needed. So Celebi sends Pokemon from the future back to the past. Poppy Dialga must be happy with all that Soda Bro effect he's feeling. And this basically becomes a little boy loses his parents to an evil businessman who wants to destroy the forest and find Celebi. He again gets adopted by a cult of Zarude, and basically it boils down to another eco-terrorist movie. At least the Pokemon doesn't have telepathy for the 70th time.